report, participation request and asset transfer, and participatory budgeting performance report. Apologies, and I think that's Kevin who's going to be presenting that. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. And the title's maybe grander than the report that is in front of me. In that sense, is the lengthy title gives a kind of indication that this is part of our annual report to this committee in terms of our returns across these three headings around our participation requests, our participatory budget and return, and performance around about community asset transfer. And the official returns are contained within the appendices of this report. It is literally just giving you an update on what we have returned. It covers the last fiscal year 23-24 and was submitted just at the end of June of this year. In terms of the paper itself, gives you kind of indication that we have had no participation requests over that reporting period, which, to be honest, is not unusual in that sense, given the nature of participation requests. It is quite a formal way, but I would also like to highlight that here within Manager Council and within the county in general, we are good at engaging with our communities and our communities working alongside us. So no participation request is not necessarily a bad thing. It may be reflecting of the really good work that is taking place, particularly around about the likes of the Family Wellbeing Partnership and the work that is developing within our communities, that we are working with them on a very regular basis, where there is really good engagement of a user-tenant participation and satisfaction surveys. Then we're shown that that is quite positive in terms of the engagement, etc. So there is an element of assurances that this committee can take in terms of our work around about engagement and that approach. In terms of participatory budgeting, where we have been asked to take a 1% of our operating budget and apply that to a participatory budgeting approach. We were just short of the target for 23-24. I think we were 0.92% of our commitment. We have internally, just for members' information, sought to give guidance out to our departments and our services about how they can progress their everyday work in encouraging participatory budgeting approaches within their work, and we would hope to see that increase. I would put the caveat in, we are within challenging times fiscally, and that does at times make it difficult, but we will see in terms of the engagement with communities broadly, there is other ways in which we can support them in that broader participatory democracy approach, where we are engaging our communities. And in terms of the CAT transfer, at that stage, we had one applicant who withdrew through the process, which was unfortunate. But aside from that, members, I can tell you certainly what we're seeing this year is quite a flurry of activity around community asset transfer. So I'm not worried that that is an area that is dying out here within Manager, and certainly something that is growing and something that we will strengthen through our asset management strategy, which will come in September of next year. I'm hoping that is helpful overview of the paper in front of you, and I'm happy to take any questions. I do have Leslie Bailey here with me. If you go too technical for me, I may need to ask for some support. Thank you.
Okay, I'll move first to Councillor Harrison and then to Councillor Quinn.
Hi Kevin, thanks for that. Just a question on community asset transfers. Are we exploring any ways of making that process simpler for communities? It often feels very, and I know they feel it, is difficult to move things on.
Thanks very much, Councillor, for that question. In terms of the process, we do follow the National Guidance Roundabout Community Empowerment Act, Section 5, in terms of our asset transfer process. I know that in discussion with officers within the council, we are really keen to see if we can streamline that process. and look at that systematic approach to asset transfer and thinking wider than just our buildings, but also in terms of land assets that we may hold in that sense, and encourage that empowerment within our communities for that. So it is something we are exploring. It is a section that will be formed within the asset management strategy, and we'll hopefully refine some of those processes. And I think the big bit for me is the communication, how we engage communities and the knowledge of how they can get involved in the asset transfer process. So some of the things that I have in mind in terms of taking that forward is like a property portfolio, that we can at least showcase some of the assets we believe would be ripe for asset transfer. That wouldn't debar any community organisation coming forward for other assets though.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Quinn.
Hi Kevin, can you provide us with a little bit more information about participatory budgeting? Like, was it only like service users that were invited along to these activities for different things? Were they open to the general public? How did it work? And I'm assuming that, you know, they got to vote on things, and was it just a case of whoever showed up, we voted on a range of options and then that was what we went with, or was it a little bit more nuanced to it than that? Thanks.
Councillor Quinn, this is one that I'm going to ask my colleague to come up on, who may have the finer detail, because a lot of this activity happened prior to myself coming on board here.
So hello, thank you, Councillor. The question, can I just clarify, was what's the nature of the participatory budgeting exercises that we've been carrying out, basically?
Yeah, just kind of how we're running it, who's been invited, you know, what kind of option, you know, what kind of things are they making? Are we just deciding whether we want something painted, you know, blue or brown? Are they given more of a range of options, or you just tell them they get a little bit more of, obviously, without too much detail?
The council services have the authority to determine the nature of the exercise that they carry out themselves, so it's not done corporately to one format. And so we got reports from several services saying not so much that they were carrying out participatory budgeting, you know, with a capital P and a capital B by that definition, but more that they were making decisions on budgets by involving the service users and people with experience of the service. So to my knowledge, none of the exercises that were reported in the 2023-24 report were open to the public. They were exercises that were undertaken through working relationships with service users who had formed panels, for example, to assess the use of resources. So in some cases, they were given, there was one exercise which was allocating grants, and the panel were given options, and they had to choose a limited number of options in order to suit the budget. But mostly they were panels that were making decisions on the allocation of resources through discussion about what was required, what was needed, and what resources were available.
Right. So kind of discussing in a panel and things like that. So did they actually have a say in the final decision of it in those cases, or is it more just a consultation? Because kind of the way you're describing it sounds like it was not participatory. If they're not having a direct vote on it, how is that different than a consultation? Because to me that just sounds like a consultation.
Yeah, I think that it wasn't PB, I think, that you're picturing, in the sense that the decision, as far as the report that I've compiled concerned, that it wasn't a decision taken by citizens, that the citizens were involved, informed the decision, and they were involved in making choices about how, pardon me, how the funding was spent. So not PB in that strict definition that I can gather. All the decisions were made alongside officers or paid staff.
Okay. In my mind, that's not participatory budgeting, that's a consultation, but I don't know, that's maybe a different story. Is there a way, like not today, is it possible to get a bit more information about how those were run? If there's a little bit more information that can be provided, if there's not, if this is what we have, then that's fine. I'm not looking for like a big detail, any more kind of detail than that just now. But yeah, are we doing any participatory budgeting? Because I just want to know what is participatory budgeting and where people get to vote, and then the decision is made based on people voting, and what is not on this. That's what I'm looking for, really. What is people giving input? To me, that's just a consultation. That's not participatory budgeting. If you're asking their opinion, their feedback, and then we're going to be making decisions, that I'm more interested in what is actually people get to vote on an option or options, and then other ones that get feedback. Is there any way just to provide that distinction to us, maybe just later on? We could have that sent out so we could see how much is actually kind of people deciding and how much is actually people just consulting on budgets.
Councillor Quinn, happy to send further information out to you in terms of the details in here. What I would also say is that in terms of some of the panels where our citizens have been part of the decision-making process, so therefore they are making the decision in terms of some of the spend on this, whereas your description of a consultation is maybe not necessarily reflective of the action that is taking place there, but happy to follow up with further details around about the specifics around about these programmes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Benny.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think probably the first thing I should say is, I mean, I was involved very heavily with the first one, which was in Alba, and basically what happened there was that a lot of people come along who wanted to start something, and they did it. I mean, there was very little at the start of anybody coming in and telling them you have to do this, this, and this. So when Mary started in Alva, she just got a lot of people together, then started asking for money from different places, charities and stuff like that, so they got that together. It took about 3 years. It's not a thing that you can just do, you know, you don't have just a committee of 3 people say, right, we'll do this tomorrow. It took about 3 years. You were involved in that as well, very heavily. And I mean, we had a lot of hoops that we had to go through. But at the end of the day, they were getting a lot of money from all different groups all across the country to fund that. And at all the time they were doing that, they were being involved with different people coming in. But it was mostly about 7 or 8 people who were running it, basically, but not in a charitable way. So and now, I mean, the one in Alpha is doing phenomenal work. They fed hundreds and hundreds of people during COVID, hot meals every day during COVID. And it is a worthwhile thing to try and do, but it's not for the faint-hearted. You will not get it. There was a few of them and different ones that started it and then gave up because it was just too difficult for them. They didn't have the background to do it, so it was very difficult for them. But yeah, I mean, if anybody needs a help to start that up, then they should go into Alpha and speak to Mary, because she's always saying that she is more than happy to feed out what happened with her.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Benny.
Councillor Benny's question is, did you know that?
I was taking it that Councillor Benny was supporting in the response, so that was fine. I had my thought processes going and I thought Councillor Benny's supporting in the response, which I think was really useful at that point because it shows participatory budgeting in action, which I think was really a really valuable input into the meeting, so you don't need to frame it as a question, that's okay. Thank you. Councillor Coyne.
Thank you. So as I understand it, there are two ways that this process can start. As a community can come forward, as has just been described, or officers find themselves involved in an activity which they or their supervisor determines might come within the envelope of PB. Who makes the decision as to whether that is in fact qualified to go under the PB budget, if you like, and who signs off on that?
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of the PB, when it was first really echoed within Scotland in terms of as an approach, a lot of it was focused on grant making. PB, where there was a pot of money, people would put up ideas and communities would vote on what they preferred. The luxury of those pots of funds have diminished over the years, and there's also a growing transition away from that grant-making PB approach to involving our citizens in the decision-making process in terms of what is important to them, that community-led approach, and that's where some of that work is coming forward that Councillor Benny spoke about in terms of communities identifying what their priorities are, what's important to them, and how they help make the decisions in taking some of that work forward. Officers can play a part in that in terms of signposting to resources that have, or how we help our communities to influence and decide on how we utilise council spend through departments, etc. In that sense, or it could be in terms of other third-party monies that are coming to the area and how communities themselves direct how that money should be spent. In that sense, in terms of the reporting mechanism, what we do is in terms of the interaction with the council and the support that we have had through the council's funds, is record that, capture that and report that in. So we would do that as officers in terms of determining to make sure that it's in line with the principles of participatory budgeting and make sure that that's reported in on an annual basis, usually in the June of every year. So it would be officers capturing that of what work has happened within the council's budget or the monies within the council that attribute to this PB, but PB can go much, much wider than just what our council monies are. This is about our 1% reporting.
Can I come in, Leslie? I just wondered if
Sorry, Chair, can I add a rider to that?
if you don't mind?
Okay, I kind of think I got that, but I'm just anxious to know who is the person who makes the final decision as to whether a set of activities come under the umbrella of PB. Who signs that off? In other words, if we were challenging it, who would be interrogating? That's the question. First part of the question, excuse me, I'm speaking. And the other part of the question is there any incentive? Is there any incentive for the council? Do you want to? Is there any incentive for the council to record PB activity? In other words, is there a tension in the mechanism that might create mission creep?
Thanks, Councillor. So, in terms of who ultimately signs off the return back to the Scottish Government, it's the Chief Executive signs that off. Officers obviously compile.
Our Chief Executive.
Our Chief Executive signs off the return that we send up in June of each year. Officers obviously compile that, and there's checks and balances done internally, and the Chief Executive signs that off in return. In terms of incentives, this is a national commitment that we have signed up to, as have COSLA, in terms of this approach to the 1%. In terms of incentive, do we get any money for this specifically? No, we don't. But it's we don't, because it's an ambition that we're working towards. But I think collectively, in terms of COSLA and the Scottish Government, believe that empowering our communities, involving our communities in the decision-making process, certainly our own ambition here within Club Manager, echoes some of those principles as well. We've seen in the Development and Family Wellbeing Partnership, it's very much in line with what we want to achieve. So it's not so much an incentive, but actually something that we are behind in terms of supporting, because it's in line with our own principles, our values and our expectations that we're taking forward.
Leslie, I was just wanting to ask if it would be possible in the future. I think I've said before, the kind of table makes it look like you're not doing anything, which I know is absolutely not the case. So I just wondered if it would be possible in the future, as well as the kind of standard report that you have to submit, whether it would be useful for us to have some context about some of the work, confidentially of course, but some of the work that goes on in the background, because I know there's an absolute power of work. But I don't feel from a scrutiny point of view the papers reflect the level of work that actually goes on. So I wondered if it would be possible to put something in place in the future.
Chair, if you don't mind, I don't mind answering that one. I think what we will do in future is, rather than update the committee on our statutory returns, we'll maybe just give you an update on our activity, which will also include our statutory returns, and I think that will capture the element, like the previous paper, that maybe capture some of the case studies, etc., of the work that we've done, that gives more context and body to the wider actions that we're taking under these headings.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Do you have any other questions? No. Okay, well, I do know the power of work that goes behind this, so I'm very happy to move this paper. I think, certainly it gives us the kind of statutory response, but I know there is a lot of work behind that, and I'm grateful to Councillor Benny for some of the context as well in that, and the work that goes on. So very happy to move the paper, and looking for a seconder. Councillor Benny, yep. Open to debate. Would you like to debate the paper? No? Happy to note the paper. Thank you very much. Now move on to item 10, which is the annual complaints report 2023-24, and that was going to be Sheree, Sheree.
Afternoon, committee. Good afternoon. So this report presents an overview of performance relating to complaints handling for 23-24, and which is presented to committee annually. We also publish this information on our website. The Council's complaints handling procedure is published on the Council's website and follows guidance produced by the Scottish Public Services Ombudsman. It follows a two-stage complaints process, which is outlined in the report. Whilst the overall number of complaints managed in 23-24 is largely consistent with previous years, the report does highlight some concerns with likely underreporting of complaints, which is recognised. This will be addressed with the deployment of a new complaints handling and reporting system, a refresh of the complaints handling procedures, and training and support for employees managing and responding to complaints. In terms of performance, the report shows some declining trends when compared with previous years, particularly in complaints handled within agreed timeframes at both stages 1 and 2. Although this is subject to ongoing managerial focus, and early indications show an improving picture for 24-25. The report also provides high-level information on complaints reviewed by the Ombudsman over the same reporting period. Appendix 1 to the report provides a high-level summary of complaints in 23-24 by directorate and service area, and also provides performance against the SPSO performance measures. I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Any questions? Councillor Coyne?
Thanks, Chair. Sheree, in page 163, item 1.5, it mentions one of these complaints was upheld by SPSO, by the Ombudsman. Is that one of the ones that has no outcome recorded? On page 165, it mentions in 3 different lines at the bottom that we do not have an outcome recorded on the complaint system. So do we have an outcome for that one in particular?
Yes, so we have investigated that particular complaint, and the SPSO has then investigated our investigation and response to that particular complaint. The SPSO have published their report and recommendations relating to that complaint on their website. So I provided the links to the SPSO website where that full report is provided and is publicly available on their website.
So that you're saying their recommendations have been implemented? Sorry, I should have asked that out loud.
They've certainly been passed to the relevant service and will be being implemented. I couldn't tell you what stage that is at in terms of implementing improvement actions at this stage.
What concerns me, I'm looking for some comfort on this, is that we are now, 8 months and 12 days after the deadline, after the end of the reporting period. And if something hasn't been completely cleared and actioned in 8 months, there's something wrong, is there not?
So when the SPSO make a decision on a complaint, they'll make a set of recommendations to the council. That recommendation is then published on the website, provided to the complainant, and provided back to the council and the service who's leading that area. So I think the complaint you're referring to sits within planning. So the recommendations that are in that complaint response, investigation response from the SPSO will have been provided back to the planning department. The recommendations are publicly available, so they are published in full. As part of those recommendations, they'll set some timelines, and I haven't been involved directly in a complaint with an SPSO recommendation. However, I anticipate they would follow up and ask for evidence when that those recommendations have been implemented.
Understood.
And can I just follow on from that in terms of obviously, I agree with Councillor Coyne. I'm concerned about, the complaints being followed up. Certainly, we are presented the complaints report at Audit and Scrutiny, and we often might have a lot of interaction with constituents who have raised some of these complaints. And I think it's important from us, the group's point of view, to be able to potentially meet with the individuals involved and see what has been done about their complaints. So it'd be useful for us, I think, as a committee to have a response on how some of these things have been addressed. And it's the same as a lot of the reports, and I'm going to come to a question then, but it's the same as a lot of the reports that we've had today. We've had quite a lot of context behind it, because I was concerned looking at the report that it seemed to be a decline in the number of complaints being upheld, and that always concerns me, because I think we're learning lessons from complaints as a council, and certainly that's what Scrutiny is all about as well. We're certainly learning the lessons that I don't think we should ever be scared of complaints. I was always delighted to receive them, because it certainly made me really understand what was going wrong and to put things right. And I think, I'd be concerned that we don't have follow-up at this stage. I would rather have had this report with this is what's been followed up and this is what's been done, and we would then be able to go back to constituents and say, this is what's been addressed. Now, would that be possible in the future for a more substantive report, where we have real, I know without going into individual cases and breaching any confidentiality, but this is in the public domain. And I think essentially if we were able to have something to go back with, it would ease the tensions in the local area and enable us to deal with things effectively. Councillor Quinn.
Yes, a couple of a follow-up on that, because on the SPSO, I read through that, it has the recommendations are that we apologise. The recommendations about the planning as well, and then part of the recommendations was that we didn't comply with the time limits and things. That there was delays, and we didn't inform people of delays, and we should inform people when there's going to be delays. So surely that stuff can be addressed very quickly. So I get the planning stuff, that's a different issue, but has that stuff happened, that we apologise like we were asked to do, and is there anything we put in place to ensure that there won't be delays again? Without informing people appropriately and other things that they recommended.
I'll perhaps ask the service to give an update on that particular complaint. I wasn't involved with that complaint in any detail at all, but just a bit on the improving processes. So I think in the paper we do speak about the fact we're at an advanced stage of user testing on our new complaints system. And the new complaints system is going to give us a significant amount more ability to be able to analyse complaints. It'll provide data dashboards for management information for managers on a live basis. So the current system requires quite a lot of manipulation and analysis of the data. I think the new system, along with the review of the processes, the complaints handling process and training for managers and staff will help our general position on complaints. And I totally agree with Councillor Rennie. Complaints provide us with a really, really positive amount of insight in how we're delivering services, and we should treat them in that sense. They're not negative. And actually, how we manage complaints says an awful lot about the council in terms of how we treat our customers. It helps improve our relationships with our customers, and it also helps improve our reputation in terms of wanting to put issues right as soon as we possibly can. I think it's a really important process that we get right, and I think the report acknowledges that there are improvement actions needed in that sense. And I know Lee and I have had discussions, so she feels the same way as me. But on the particular complaint that you raised, I'm going to ask Kevin if he's got an update. I'm not sure he will. No, we can come back to you on an update from that.
It would certainly be good to bring it back to a future committee, really, maybe a short report even, just to show what sort of outcomes have come from some of the complaints. I think that would be, I was just reflecting on the fact we're a scrutiny committee, and like, to do effective scrutiny, this is one of the most key and important areas for us to do it. And that's why I think having sort of more substantial feedback, I think, would be really useful. So I think that's, I really value what you said there, Cherie. I think your recognition of that is really important. I think that'll make us be much more robust going forward.
Just maybe and it is an annual report. I don't know if we can look at with the new system, it can be a 6-monthly report, but also we can include in the report any recommendations from the SPSO and at what stage have they been actioned or where they are in terms of actions going forward, so we can include that as an addendum to the reports going forward, so we can see what's actually happening.
Councillor Coyne?
This new system, Cherie, is it passive, or will it have things in it like alarm bells when deadlines are missed and things like that? It will have all of that in it.
Yes, so it's significantly more advanced than the current system we have. So I made a wee note of a few things I thought I might ask this question. So live dashboards, which can be accessed by managers at any time, performance management information that could be supplementing business planning reporting. So complaints are reported to Committee on Business Planning reporting. Improved recording in terms of classification, service, sub-service of complaints, automated emails to investigating officers on timelines, automated templates to the complainants, so we can ensure consistency in how we're responding to complaints, so template letters, that kind of thing, and inclusion of SPSO recommendations and outcomes, and those would be updated on the system. So it will provide a much more enhanced level of information than what we currently have.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, well, again, I'm saying I'm happy to move the paper, but obviously with the kind of recommendations that we've taken forward to the committee, and that's been heard, and we appreciate that. In terms of the reports coming forward, will be much more substantive going forwards. But I'm happy to move the paper because I feel that you have heard us today, and I think that's really important. So, could I have a seconder?
Formally second.
Councillor Point, and we're open to debate. Would you like to debate the paper? Okay, thank you. Note the paper. Everybody happy to note the paper? Yep. Okay, we shall move on to interim workforce strategy update, and that is Alistair here. It's Alistair.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. This report presents a second update on the Council's interim workforce strategy for 2023 to 25 and asks the committee to note, comment and challenge as appropriate. By way of context, the interim workforce strategy seeks to establish a foundation for workforce development within the Council ahead of the development of a new strategic workforce plan for 2025 to 2028. The strategy explores a number of themes which are aligned to the Council's organisational change framework, these being creating the conditions for change, developing the team and releasing the potential. The strategy includes an action plan which is attached to Annex A of the report, and the report presented today notes progress to date on each of these areas. Members of the committee are asked to note that of the 28 actions identified, only 9 remain outstanding, and whilst a number of these will complete out with their original timescale, they are anticipated to complete within the timescale of the strategy itself, with progress being monitored via the interim workforce strategy implementation group and the HR operational plan. Now, despite these challenges, since the last update to the committee, a number of notable achievements have been made, including development and rollout of the 2024 staff survey, the re-establishment of the Healthy Working Lives group, agreement of a new programme of leadership development events for the Senior Leadership Forum and Team Leaders Forum, and the launch of a new learning and development opportunity for all elected members based around the Improvement Services Political Assessment Tool, on which Councillor Coyne kindly and probably inadvertently gave me the opportunity to promote at the last Council meeting. Each of these actions, sitting amongst the full array of activity within the strategy, is designed to ensure that the Council has a solid foundation of workforce development supports for staff, and will ensure that staff are supported, understood, respected and engaged in their work. I hope this update is useful, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on the report.
Councillor Coyne.
Thank you, Chair. Alistair, 3.8 outstanding items include on page 172. Item 3 on that mentions absence management. I'm surprised that that's one of the items that's not had the highest priority, because I would have thought that had the potential to make a considerable impact on the economics of running the workforce if we got that under control, because it's a problem, is it not? I mean, it costs a lot of money, people being off and not being productive. So what are the rocks in the road that prevented that being a first priority and now still being incomplete?
Yep, thanks for knowing that, Councillor. Just to give context to that, both those actions of the absence management review and the recruitment review were outcomes of the work undertaken by Truman Change in 2021, and their recommendations that were included within this interim workforce strategy to ensure that they were progressed. Now, as I say, we anticipate that all of those actions will be completed within the timescale of the strategy itself, but you're right to note that they have been delayed. In Annex A of the report at page 175, it does actually note the reasons for that, and that we have been impacted by long-term absences within the HR team, which have challenged progressing that work. Now, what I will say, particularly with regards to absence management, is there are robust policies and processes in place with regards to absence management, and we have recently recruited an absence compliance officer who has a specific role to look at long-term absence cases within the Council to ensure that those are addressed and that we are addressing them in a timely manner that is in line with those policies that we have in place.
Okay, thanks. Another thing that confused me going to your report from 175 onwards, you've said elsewhere, I think there were, 9 outstanding out of the 28. I got confused. I counted the word complete and that came to 10. And I counted the green boxes and they came to 19. I don't understand the maths here. What do the green and red boxes not actually mean anything anymore?
I think there may be a couple of those actions which are ongoing, which form part of business as usual within HR and workforce development, which could be included within that completed. But really, I take your point that they should come out as ongoing. Now, again, your point's relevant because I've just had discussions with Judy Richardson, who's our performance advisor in the council, and what we're going to do in future is ensure that the reporting structure of these is reflective of our Pintana performance management reports, which you will no doubt be familiar in seeing, and that will give a much more accurate representation as to the progress of each of these actions.
Do these colourings are they just there for our benefit, or do they actually serve a purpose within the department and others, focusing people's minds on outstanding actions, or is that another part of the process that takes care of that?
I think it's probably twofold. It helps to focus your minds as councillors when you have a look at that report, but very much so also helps us identify what needs progressed. As I said, all actions within this interim workforce strategy are monitored via the interim workforce strategy implementation group and within the HR operational plan itself as well. So it is reviewed and monitored on a regular basis, but the colours as they are today are for help with committee to understand what is still outstanding. But as I say, as we move to that more structured Pintana reporting structure, that should be of benefit to you moving forward.
Well, they weren't very helpful today, really, were they? Okay, that's fine.
Any other questions? No? Yeah, that was easy for you there. That was good. So I'm happy to move the paper, and thanks very much for the work on this to bring us the information. And yeah, I found it fairly okay to understand, which was good. So yeah, thank you. And if we get MD to second the paper. Yep, Councillor Colleen. Open to debate. Would you like to debate the paper? Happy to note the paper? Yep. Thank you very much, Alison. And now we'll move on to item 12, redeployment update, and that is Sarah Langsford. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, Committee. The purpose of this report is to provide the Committee with an update, as requested by Council back in November 2023, on the new redeployment policy and procedure. Since the introduction of this procedure, looking at the period of January to November 2024, 10 employees of the Council have accepted voluntary redundancy packages within the 6-month period. 6 employees have been successfully redeployed into alternative roles, and 1 employee is currently undertaking temporary duties within their 6-month period, and we're actively striving to identify a suitable alternative role for this employee. In the previous 12 months, if we look back from January to December 2023, 1 employee was successfully redeployed, 3 employees left the Council with voluntary redundancy packages, and 4 employees continued on redeployment throughout this time frame. This shows that the new process on redeployment has been helpful in us successfully securing permanent posts for our redeployed employees. Happy to take any questions the committee may have on this. Any questions?
Thanks, Chair. In 3.6, the 4 employees remaining on redeployment throughout this time, are they in the statistics in the section above at 3.5? They'll be in there somewhere, are they?
So to respond to that, those 4 redeployees have now, just thinking off the top of my head, we have successfully secured roles for 2 of them, and 2 have exited the Council with voluntary redundancy packages.
Sorry, my apologies, I didn't quite catch that last
Yes, so 2 of them have been successfully redeployed in 2024, and 2 have exited with voluntary redundancy packages.
Thanks.
Councillor
Alright, so can we just confirm then there's been nobody that's been on redeployment for over 6 months then who's had to leave, yeah, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Everyone has left on a voluntary basis.
Okay, so based on 3.5 and 3.6, we are saying that this is a success because people have been redeployed or accepted voluntary redundancy. But is that a result of changing the policy to 6 months, Or is that a result of all the other actions that we took along with that when the policy was introduced? How can we determine which one it is?
Yeah, I think it has been a dual approach. I think the 6 months has helped to focus employees' minds, to focus our minds within HR, within management. We've worked closely with economic development and the trade unions as well. The new process has certainly been helpful, so we introduced fortnightly meetings through the new procedure. Like I say, the first meeting we involved economic development right from the start for those who wish to look externally to the council. We've been very clear on all posts going to lead employees first. We've worked really closely on developing skills into other areas. So, for example, we've redeployed people into completely different areas of the council, into health and safety, IT, education services, a number of different roles. So I think it's been a bit of a council-wide approach, and the new process has certainly helped us to successfully find permanent posts. Whereas before, perhaps there was more interim project work going on.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Happy to formally move the report with a formal seconder. Yep. So the paper's open for debate. Would you like to debate the paper? We're all happy to note the paper? Okay, thanks very much. I'm sure we want to final paper, I think. Yep. So Audit and Scrutiny Committee annual report follow-up, and that is going to be Chris.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, Committee. The paper as tabled presents the Audit and Scrutiny Committee annual report for 23-24. Committee are asked to note, challenge and comment on the report and agree that the report be presented to the next available meeting of Council. I would draw the Committee's attention to two corrections to the actual report, not the cover paper. 3.5 was included in error and should be there, and 8.1 should read the Council's corporate risk register is scrutinised quarterly by committee as opposed to at each committee. So apologies to committee for this. Corrections will be made to the paper prior to submission to Council. Guidance published by the Chartered Institute of Professional Finance and Accountancy, or CIPFA, in 2022 is accepted as best practice for local authority audit committees. The guidance recommends that all audit committees should prepare an annual report that provides assurance to all those charged with governance that it fulfils its purpose and can demonstrate its impact. The tabled report has been prepared to inform committee and council of the work undertaken by our Audit and Scrutiny Committee during 23-24 and provides that assurance that our committee fulfils its purpose and can demonstrate impact. The Audit and Scrutiny Committee is an integral component of the Council's corporate governance framework and provides an independent and high-level focus on the audit, assurance and reporting arrangements that underpin good governance and financial standards. The report, which has been informed through benchmarking with other councils, is split into a number of sections in order to highlight the important work of committee. Key areas to note: committee met 7 times during the year and all sessions were recorded. This was 1 additional meeting to the normal cycle of 6 given the volume of reporting. During the cycle, committee considered 63 reports, 30 for audit and 33 for scrutiny. A range of briefings and other training opportunities were offered to members during 23-24 and committee agreed to the development of a specific training plan. However, due to officer capacity, not all elements of the audit and scrutiny programme were delivered. 7 audit reports were completed to final report stage and these were reported to committee during the year. Based on the assignments undertaken by internal audit, an overall limited assurance was given in relation to the Council's arrangements for risk and management. No reports were submitted by external audit for consideration during the reporting cycle. The Council's corporate risk register, whilst previously presented at every committee, is now presented quarterly for robust scrutiny. The 23-24 year-end update on the Council's corporate risk register was considered by committee in June of this year, and the corporate performance report was presented to committee in April of 24. During 23-24, 12 exceptions to contract standing orders were noted by committee, amounting to just over £2.5 million. 6 monthly reports are produced and presented to committee by Police Scotland and Scottish Fire and Rescue in line with the requirements set out in Police and Fire Reform Scotland Act 2012. A number of other reports were also considered by committee through the year, including the Procurement Annual Report, Health and Safety Annual Report, the Chief Social Work Officer Annual Report, financial performance, treasury management and portfolio business plan updates. A key element of the committee's self-reflection is the annual self-evaluation review. This year the self-assessment took place on the 17th of September. An overall committee agreed with statements as presented, noting a number of actions. These being, whilst the number of members to be quoted remains as 4, the majority of members should be from opposition groups. Should there be a future requirement to co-op members, this would be taken forward. All members of the committee will be invited to attend the pre-agenda meetings to assist and to ensure full scrutiny. The annual report also includes the views of both the Chair and the Vice Chair, who indicate their confidence that the committee aligns with the SIPA position statement and that the work undertaken by the committee fulfils the remit and offers reasonable assurance regarding the control environment, risk management systems, and that the overall governance framework operates effectively. However, the Chair and Vice Chair highlight that the level of assurance has fallen from substantial to limited, but are assured that senior officers are taking steps to address the identified weaknesses. The Chair and Vice Chair outlined that committee will play an important part and role to ensure the appropriate actions are taken during 24-25. And I'm happy to take questions on committee's report on its performance.
Any questions?
The first one was a clarification. I think I may have struck out the wrong 3.5. Is it 3.5 on page 190 I'm striking?
Yes.
Right, that makes more sense. It wasn't there. Right. Yeah, I'm going to ask a question about page 187, and actually it applies to almost, but not all, every paper that we looked at today. And it's where it lists council policies, and the get-out clause complies with relevant council policies. I think this is something we need to look at, because, I'm going to ask if you agree with me, that's what the question is, because if we're scrutinising policy, we should know the policy we're scrutinising. And I think it's important, since there is no directory of policies available in the council, that if we wish to make up a list of policies, we can start by having them listed here. Each paper should list the policies that it's affecting or calling upon in support of what it's saying. So I'll address it as a complaint about this paper, but it's a general complaint. But I don't take it personally. If you mention council policies, tell us the council policies that you mean, because eventually I would like to build up in my own database all the council policies, so that I can access one if I'm asked about a policy, or I want to see if something we are doing conflicts with a policy. If I have a list of them, I can do that. But if I don't have a list of them, I can't even invent the name of them. Do you agree?
I take your point on board, Councillor Coyne. I will take away and reflect, and I will engage with committee services as well. I know there are proposed changes to the report template anyway that we are kind of looking at developing going forward. We will take your views on board and reflect on that.
Well, that's it. Thank you.
Other questions?
No.
No. Okay, I'm happy to, thanks for the work on this, and I'm happy to,
Happy to formally move the paper to have a seconder.
Oh, I'll second.
Obviously, yeah.
Just quick.
Open to debate? No, absolute paper? Yeah. Okay, thanks everybody. That's the end of the meeting. Thanks for your time today, and thanks for your attendance.